Ooh, welcome to Up in the Blue Seats, our New York Rangers podcast from the New York Post. That highlight you heard of Chris Kreider's overtime goal, courtesy of the great Sam Rose and MSG Network. Of course, it's Jake Brown, the podfather, here, along with my co-host, the star of the show, the queen of the Post, the New York Rangers beat writer for the Post, Mollie Walker. And of course, Larry Brooks will join us later, our Hockey Hall of Fame writer, as well as your mailbag questions. You've got mail. Well, first segment here, we have a little something different. We have a guest co-host for the first 10 minutes here from the Blue Crew Pod. He also is a contributor for the Action Network, and he is an NHL contributor for Bleacher Report, Open Ice. He does it all. He also is a male model on the side. Johnny Lazarus, Johnny boy, welcome to the show. Johnny, be good tonight. Welcome to Up in the Blue Seats.
Thank you guys for having me. I love the both of you, so it's an honor to be here. Appreciate it.
This could be the best looking trio in podcast history.
Oh my God, shut up. I was more so going to say we've got our UMass roots coming through and through here, and I appreciate that more than most people know, or I guess probably everybody knows how much that means to me.
And you played hockey, right, Johnny?
I did play hockey. I still kind of do play hockey, just not at the competitive level I used to.
Did you play with Zach Jones?
No, Jonesy was a year after me, but we've connected a bunch through the UMass alumni. Actually, I saw him last year at Game 1 of the Penguin series. I went up to the suite to say what's up to him in between periods and stuff. So he's a really good guy. I actually got to know him a little bit.
Confirm besties, Molly, when he's dropping Jonesy on us. He's using his nickname. What is this?
Confirmed former teammate. But wait, Johnny, you were on UMass though. You played for UMass before Carvel came in, right?
No, I was the Molly, come on. You wrote for us. I was the first goal under the Greg Carvel era. I scored the first goal.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So
I'm never letting him forget that.
No, as you shouldn't. You shouldn't. Okay.
I was there from 2016 to 2018. I transferred after Christmas my sophomore year, which was Makar and Ferraro's freshman year.
I didn't cover that year. That's why.
Oh, you didn't?
I'd not. Yeah, his first year I didn't cover. I covered the next two.
All right, 97% of listeners have no idea what you're talking about. So let's get back to the New York Rangers here. And Mullett Arena, not to describe your hair, Johnny, but Mullett Arena was popping. 5,000, what was it, 4,600 fans, Molly, in Arizona?
Yeah, in reality, it's 5,000, but it's more like 4,600 once you take away the press seats and the media and that kind of stuff. It's really more like a 4,600 seat arena, but it was electric. I mean, I understand the sentiment. Why is the NHL letting the Coyotes, letting an NHL team play in this barn? But, it really, I mean, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It gets the job done, and I had a great time. So, and I think the players did too, even though the visiting locker room looks kind of like a scene out of a horror movie or something like that.
That's just temporary though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is just temporary. I'm hoping that it's temporary. I'm pretty sure that they're just waiting to get approval for the new arena, which is also going to be in Tempe, but not on ASU campus. As fun as that would be to just continue that, but I think it would be a little bit better to go maybe somewhere away from the party scene. But I mean, I think it was a great time. I had a great time. I think the players had a great time, and they won.
The quotes were amazing from it.
Oh yeah, it was so good. Keandre Miller was kind of at a loss for words after the game. He really wasn't sure. And it was funny because a decent amount of the Rangers were former college players, so they are familiar with that kind of atmosphere. But like Keandre was saying, once you play in the NHL for a while, you almost kind of forget about that kind of atmosphere for a bit. So he was like, it was, a little bit weird to be back in that kind of environment. But I mean, who doesn't have fun? And it was basically a home game for the Rangers. That was the other layer to it. There were so many Ranger fans in attendance. I mean, a lot of New Yorkers just like to move out to Arizona for the dry heat. My dad being one of them, and my whole dad's side of the family lives out in Arizona. So I get the appeal. I really do.
It's pretty nice. Also, I mean, it happened to fall on Halloween weekend. That was a trip that I wanted to go on too. I mean, who wouldn't want to be at ASU on Halloween? I mean, I might be a little overage for it, but
Yeah,
if I was a little younger, I would have planned that trip.
Overage? What are you in, like 25 or how old are you?
26, but I shouldn't be on a college campus for Halloween. Come on.
Molly, did you end up going? Molly, you said you were going to try. What happened?
Yeah, no, Vince, I was joking with Vince Percogliano. We're the youngest people on the beat. I was like, you think we could, finesse our way into a frat party or two? You want to go frat hopping on Halloween weekend? Why not?
I remember my first night of college and first time I had jungle juice. Tastes like Gatorade. It was a beautiful thing. First time I ever drank. I had never drank until my first night dorming out of college. So
wow,
I was
look at you.
Downloaded clean versions of rap songs, didn't curse. We get soap in my mouth if I curse. Yeah, it was the Irish Spring or the Dove. If I said sucks, I'd be getting
what was the drink? Burnett's?
Yeah. Coke, cherry Coke was my drink of preference, and then I got healthy and did Diet Coke. Anyways, enough about us. The Rangers right now in a little 3-game win streak, Johnny. As a fan of the team who just sold your tickets in section 420, I think it's a requirement to be stoned if you're sitting in section 420. Where are you on the team right now? It's been a mixed bag, not great in the power play, but they're finding ways to win, and a huge game Thursday night. It's going to be a packed house against the Bruins.
So I think I told this to Molly prior to the season, but I was on the train that the Rangers are going to regress this year just because you're giving a lot of responsibility to a lot of younger guys that just don't have that experience. I know they played in the conference final last year, and you can say that's, really good experience for them to gain. But when you look at teams like Chicago and Colorado and, all the pain they went through to get on top and all of, just learning about what it takes to win. And I see a lot of this Rangers team from what I saw in that, 2008 or 2008, 2009, 2010 Chicago team that was super young, super talented, didn't have the goaltending that the Rangers have in Shesterkin, but it took time for Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews and then veterans like Hossa to come in and help get them over the hump. So I think that's what this Rangers team is kind of going through right now. They have a solid core that has, some veteran experience, but they also have a lot of young guys who need to come into their own. So this year, I think it's been obviously pretty inconsistent so far with the offensive output. The 3-game win streak does feel somewhat iffy in a way because it wasn't necessarily convincing wins, even though it kind of felt like it should have been. But the Rangers are so weird right now because when you look at statistics, if you're a big, underlying numbers person, like their expected goals is very low because they're not finishing, but, they're getting all these scoring chances and out shooting their opponents almost every night. So it's like a really weird kind of back and forth vibe right now. Like, at no point did I think they were going to lose against the Flyers, but there was a little bit of scare at certain times because the puck just wasn't going in the net. Like Lafreniere's backhand that hit the post.
Crazy.
Like, I literally just
5
said, like,
posts.
Yeah. I was like, Carter Hart's just going to steal this game. Like, what's happening right now? But, I think as time goes on, the players will start to produce. Like, Kakko's getting chances, Lafreniere is getting chances, and they don't have the points to show it. But it's just only a matter of time until they do, because the chances are just continuing to come. And I just think when it rains, it pours. So once they get one, they're going to start to feel it. Like Kreider now is going to have a different vibe to him after scoring that big overtime goal. It's just once you see the puck go in the net a little bit, you feel a bit more confident. You think less when you shoot.
Yeah, I think head coach Gerard Gallant's assessment of a 6 out of 10 for the first handful of games is pretty accurate. I think, 6 is, they could do better, but again, when you look at their record, it's coming along. It's very similar to how they started last season, but I think Adam Fox said this to Larry the other day that he thinks that they're playing better now than they did last season. Though last season it was all about Shesterkin stealing game after game after game, and it's not necessarily that. Now it's just they've had some bad puck luck a couple games. They're struggling at even strength at times, and I think the biggest takeaway for me through this first sample size of games is how much their success on the power play directly correlates to their ability to win games. And that is, I think, a blessing and a curse, because when you have a power play that's as automatic, like clockwork, and so dangerous and deadly as they have, and how it can take over games, it could be great. But we've also seen the frustrations pour out and onto the ice in all aspects of the game when the puck isn't going in the back of the net, and that can kind of be a detriment to them. one of the most interesting quotes I think of the season so far was Gerard Gallant pointed out that he wasn't really a fan of their body language after one of the games where they were really having a problem with putting the puck in the net. And that, I think, is something to monitor, because that could be pretty bad. That you don't want the poor body language, the frustrations, the constantly talking to the refs, which is also something I've seen a lot this season from them. So I think that they just know what they're capable of, and that now that they're coming off of that crazy playoff run, so that getting to that point of frustration is a lot easier because they're so sure of themselves now. So it's kind of like, back and forth. It's could be a blessing, it could be a curse. So
it's that expectation, right? Like that's where the pressure comes in, because everyone now, the Rangers last year were an underdog all season, even throughout the playoffs, they were the underdog, and now they have that target on their back, and it's a whole different vibe. So
no, Adam Fox said that it was a lot easier to play to that underdog narrative. It's a lot easier to rally around, but now it's kind of a different dynamic, like you said. But it's still also, now they're coming from a place of wanting to prove that last season wasn't a fluke, and wanting to prove that they can replicate that kind of success again. So I think it's still really early on in the season is what I think. I think it's still way too early to be making big general assumptions about the New York Rangers. But we do have some fun subtext questions from our followers.
Let's do one with Johnny, because I know he's got to go to a meeting. He's a corporate guy, he's actually got a job, unlike us. We just talk about sports and stuff. But what let's give him one question and send him off with that. Molly, what do you got?
Let's do this first one from Jim Moon. I know we're used to seeing this, but should the top power play unit consistently be on the ice for 90 seconds? And is the lack of power play time hurting the growth of Capo Kakko and Alexei Lafreniere? My answer is it should be on the ice as much as it is. It's too good. It's just too good.
All right, Johnny, let's get your answer, and then we'll send you to your meeting.
I'd have to agree, although I'm not opposed to throwing Trocheck on the second unit just for a couple of games to try it out, and throwing Lafreniere and Kakko in that bumper spot, just because Trocheck is more of a net front guy. That's where he played on the Hurricanes when he was in the power play. He was at that net front, and right now Kreider has established himself as one of the best net front guys in the league. So if you do want to give Lafreniere and Kakko that extra time, maybe making that swap could help, because the power play, as good as it's been, is still only like 21%. I think it's not even as good as it was last year. So there is room and there is enough time to try to figure that out for like a 5-game span. It's not too late in the season. Obviously, we just said it's a little early in the season. So, that could be a way, but there's no reason why the power play shouldn't be on for less than a minute. I mean, Alexander Ovechkin's on the ice for 2 minutes every power play because he's the best power play player there is. So you want your best guys out there when you have the advantage. So, that's what I have to say about that.
Johnny Lazarus, J Lazzy 23 on Twitter. Check out his pod, the Blue Crew Pod, and also Bleacher Report Open Ice, Action Network covers, does it all. Johnny, thanks for coming on. We'll have you on later in the season when you don't have an 11 a.m. meeting. Thanks for coming
guys.
On.
And one thing I will say to end, the best bet of the NHL season right now is Rangers under first period. Igor's money.
Under first period. All right, Molly, place your parlays in. All right, Johnny, we'll talk to you soon. See you, man. And there goes Johnny. Good stuff from him. Has that meeting life in the morning. You got one meeting here, you got a meeting there. No meetings here, just potting here on Up in the Blue Seats. Jake Brown and Mollie Walker. Larry Brooks will join us in a few minutes for the Vitali Kravtsov show. It's all Kravtsov. So none of these questions will be about him, because we'll talk about him for the next 20 minutes or so. Let's go, Molly, to Tim Maher, Ryan Kutanansky. Still early, yet too early to release Jaroslav Halak. Wow, this is real early. And call up Louis Domingue as the backup to Igor.
It is too early. And look, I understand that one game with the let me bring it up. Where is it? Oh, the 5-1 loss to Columbus. That was bad. That was bad. It was a bad game. And you know what? He admitted it. He acknowledged it. He took full accountability for it. which we always appreciate as members of the media. And yeah, I mean, the Islander game too wasn't great, but it was also on account of the Rangers not being able to score. I think Halak is still a good backup. I really do. I think it's such a small sample size of games. Yeah, it's been 3 losses, but the Winnipeg game, the 4-1 loss in Winnipeg, he kept them in that game until the 3rd period. And he played really well in that game. But goalies, they have fluke games. They have just, bad nights. It happens. I don't think that there's any reason to make any rash sort of decisions and send him down and bring up Louis Domingue just yet. I think that we should give him a little bit more time to get acclimated and to find his game. But I think one of the most interesting things that he told me during training camp was how, as a backup, you don't have as much time, you have more time in between your starts. So when you do have a bad game like that, there's more time for you to dwell on it and to think about it and to kind of let it fester, and not as many opportunities to make up for it. So that's something that's always a difficult obstacle to clear when you're a backup. But I think Halak has been around the block. He's been a backup before many times over the course of his very long career. So I just think that, pump the brakes there. I think he's still an adequate backup for sure.
Gary Moritz wants to know, do you sense a different feeling and attitude around the team? Are they feeling the weight of expectations that didn't exist last year?
I don't necessarily think that I'm sure they know the expectations that are hanging above them. There's no doubt about that, just because it's easy to see in the way that everybody around the league talks about the Rangers now, and the expectations that people have for them. But I think that the biggest difference that I've noticed is just almost like the team confidence and how they're so confident in their ability to win games and knowing what they're capable of and knowing what they can do each and every night because of that playoff run that they just came off of. I think that's the biggest difference. And I think that's a positive shift in mindset, because if you go all the way to the Eastern Conference Final and you're still not sure of yourself and you're still not confident in your ability to actually get there, then that's a problem, I think. So I think that during preseason and training camp, there was kind of that vibe of they just wanted the regular season games to start because, who cares about preseason games? Who cares about training camp? They just really wanted the games to start to get going so that they can, work toward proving that last season was not a fluke. And I think that that's the number one goal on everybody's mind, is proving that they can replicate last season.
Carrie DeMarco, another situation, could be a man or a woman. Carrie, though, is both a man and woman. I remember the last name we had that was definitely a woman. We'll have to do our research. It appears that health may be an issue this year. Will that eventually affect the decision on carrying 22 players, Molly?
I think that's the question. I think that it's going to be hanging over the Rangers for this entire season. In an ideal world, they want to be carrying 22 players just so that they can accrue as much cap space as they possibly can by the trade deadline. But yes, Carrie's correct in the sense that it does look like injuries are going to be a problem and that their depth is going to play a much bigger of a factor than it did last season. And I think that they're going to have to carry 23, at least for the time being, with so many people injured, with Kravtsov and Hedl both injured at the moment, as insurance, because I doubt that they're going to want a situation where they're dressing 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. I definitely don't think that that's a route they want to take. I know they did it a couple times at the end of last season, but I don't think that that's a preference for them. So I think that it's going to be 23 for the time being until everybody's healthy. And then I would expect Julian Gauthier to go back down, so that they're able to carry 22 for as long as they possibly can. And it's a numbers game at this point for the Rangers. So unless the cap is raised, but that is a topic for another time. And with Larry.
Gauthier is the next question. Paul Collette, what are the odds that he carves out a full-time bottom six role?
Look, I know what Julian Gauthier is. I do. I see the upside, though. I really do. If he can figure out how to just put it all together, he could be a pretty solid bottom six guy. For anybody, he really could. It's just a matter of actually putting it all together. He has the intangibles. He has the tools, the size, the strength, and he gets to the net better than anybody on the Rangers, better than anybody, than a lot of players in the NHL. But obviously it doesn't mean anything if you're not putting the puck in the back of the net. Last season I tried to, ask him about where he thinks the disconnect is. I didn't really get much of an answer. So I don't know if it's something that he's still working on or, will just come with more reps, but there's been a lot of reps. So it's just kind of like, do they play the waiting game of seeing if he can put it all together? But I think that he does have the foundation to be a solid bottom six guy. It'll just be up to him to kind of put it together. But I do have faith. I do. I think he's a great kid. I think he has a great attitude. And as we saw the other night, he's grabbing guys by the throat in the name of standing up for Adam Fox. And I think that the team and fans should appreciate that. So I think that obviously losing Dryden Hunt to the Avalanche on the waiver wire was a bit of a tough blow, but Julian Gauthier is not a bad depth guy to have. He's not.
Yeah, and that picture, just like Revo, made its rounds of the choking, and some people had various reactions. Some enjoyed it more than others. Let's do one more question before we go to Larry Brooks. Lee Saravio, scoring at even strength remains an issue. Is it improved by trying to put the kid line back together and balancing three lines?
I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that the kid line is the most effective line for the Rangers at even strength. There's no doubt about that. But that being said, Capo Caco and Alexis Lafreniere have looked great in the top six, in my opinion. I think Capo Caco has really taken a step this season, just in terms of when I watch him, he's calling for the puck now. He wants the puck now. His puck possession is dominant. I think Larry said it best. That was Capo Caco from the World Juniors that everybody was fawning over. And I think that is part of that is playing with the top line, playing with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. I think that his confidence has taken a nice boost here, and he wants to be a contributing member of that line. And I think the same for Alexis Lafreniere. I think that they're embracing this top six opportunity, and they're playing really, really, really well right now. So for those reasons, and for the sake of the development of those two guys, because we all know that the Rangers want them to eventually be top six staples, that this is probably the best course of action right now. Also because Larry talks about this in his column, how many minutes the top six is getting and compared to the bottom six. I mean, the Rangers lineup is heavy to begin with, but the way that that Coach Gallant is deploying them right now, the top two lines are getting significant minutes, and you want Alexis Lafreniere and Capo Caco to be getting those significant minutes. So I think that right now their alignment is the best one that they have.
Well, Molly, Thursday, it's the Rangers against the best team in the league at the Garden, the Bruins. Sunday, the Red Wings come to the Garden. Tuesday, the Islanders. How about the Rangers tied atop the Metro with the Devils, who are sizzling hot 4 in a row, and the Islanders sizzling hot 4 in a row. Rangers go for 4 in a row. Good times here in the tri-state area, despite the Jets and Giants losing the other day. Good times in hockey land. It's very nice to see those teams atop the standings all together. And it's only, 10, 11 games in. So still a long ways to go. Well, we have a long conversation with Larry Brooks about one player, and that's Vitali Kravtsov. And it's coming up next Up in the Blue Seat. All right, we go from a youngin' and Johnny to the Hall of Famer and Larry Brooks joining us now. Follow him on Twitter at NYP_Brooksy. Read his stories in the Post and nypost.com. Larry, let's start once again with the man of the hour, Vitali Kravtsov. We can't get enough of him. He's out for another week here. Is this just an unfortunate happenstance, or what are your impressions of the situation?
I think he's had terrible luck. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's played sparingly in 4 games. He's been hurt 3 times. But I also think there's a matter of understanding how he needs to protect himself, that he's not fully, hasn't fully grasped, which I don't really quite understand now that I put a little bit more thought into it, because he played here for 20 games at the end of the 2021 season. He played for the Rangers for 20 games, and his performance was fine. He came in at the end, at the second half of that year. He looked a lot more comfortable and looked a lot more confident with the puck on the ice during those 20 games than he has either in training camp or in exhibition games or the little ice time he's gotten. He also had played, I think, over 40 games in Hartford. Yep. His first pro season after he went back. He rejoined the organization after he had played in the KHL for a while. So it's not as if this is his first time on North American ice. It's not as if it's his first time adapting to NHL speed. So I'm not really quite sure. What I believe is that he came here this summer wanting to fit in, wanting to put in the work, wanting to be a star with the Rangers. And I think he wants that. Maybe it's just, all in his head. I don't know, because it's been we know what happened last year. It was a tough year. I think he's paying the price for hardly playing last season. And the COVID year was tough too. So he hasn't played a lot of hockey. I mean, I'm saying a lot of words, and I'm not sure what they all add up to. Except it's a very, very difficult situation. It's a very difficult situation for the team because of cap rules, roster rules, and things like that. They're not in a position where they can afford to keep an extra player all year and hope that he can play. So listen, I wrote the other day about the possibility that they're going to ask Kravtsov to go to Hartford for a 14-day conditioning loan. I think that's what they'll do. And I reached out to his agent because a player has to consent to being assigned on a conditioning loan. So I reached out to his agent. Kravtsov's agent is Dan Milstein. We've had a lot of interaction in the past. And when I texted him and asked him the question, and I said, I know this is hypothetical. His response to me was just no comment, which I'm not sure how to interpret, but it was a little bit jarring. You could have, he could have said, listen, I don't want to talk about this now because it hasn't happened. It's premature. I haven't talked to Vitali about it. We haven't talked to the Rangers. I'm not going to talk to you before I talk to them. I get it all, and that's maybe what the no comment meant. But it was just a strange response. No comment. So I do think I think it'll get into the beginning of next week, I think, and I expect the Rangers to make that request, and then we'll find out where it goes from there.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Larry, in the sense that I feel like I have to take a step back and put all my thoughts in order before I talk about this subject, because I feel like there are a lot of layers to it. A lot of layers to it. We've got a really young kid, a kid from Russia, a kid who had a really tough go last season in the sense that he didn't make all the right decisions. And we don't even know if it was him making all of the decisions as well. He's a young guy. He's probably looking to others for advice. And I think that he kind of got the end of the stick in the sense that he came out looking horrible to everybody, to the Rangers, to fans, but with good reason. In a way, he did quit on the Rangers. He did flee back to Russia. He did decline his AHL assignment, which after these couple of games here looks like would probably be the best thing for him right now, which is also why I feel like the no comment is like you said, a pretty jarring response, because wouldn't you think that an agent would be amenable to whatever was best for his player, which anybody with eyes that's watching this kid on the ice right now could tell he's not comfortable, could tell that he's second guessing everything that he's doing, and just doesn't have, I guess, the confidence to go out there and be the player that the top 10 pick that everybody thinks that he is and that he can be.
And I think too that there's no question here also about what the Rangers' intentions are. They want the best for this player because it's in their best interest.
It's in their best interest,
It,
yes.
right? And they, coming into camp, they gave him a top 6 spot.
Yeah, gifted it.
Right.
Put it on a silver platter.
Artemi Panarin said, "Hey, I want to work with him. I want him to be with me."
Yeah.
And so it's not as we're not looking at a position at a scenario under which the Rangers are going to stick him on the 4th line, and he's never going to be able to get ahead on the Rangers because Lafreniere is on the team, because Kakko's on the team. No, I mean, he would enhance whether it's their top 6 now or their top 9. I mean, what the Rangers, I'm sure, would like now, watching the way the first 11 games have unfolded, is to keep their top 6 the way it is, and then have Kravtsov play with Hedl on the 3rd line, and then maybe have Goodrow on the left side. Yeah. And then you have a 3rd line that you can roll. And as I wrote today, they're piling minutes on their top 6 now because their bottom 6, is kind of vague at this point. So they're going to need to get away from piling minutes on their top 6 all year, or they're certainly their top 4. And an engaged and a competent and a productive Kravtsov elevates their team. Mm-hmm. And if he were to go to Hartford, and again, this is hypothetical, he would have 6 games to play down there in that 2-week period, that 14-game period, that 14-day period. Mm-hmm. And so you would expect that he would be able to reacclimate himself to playing, just to get he's not played. He's played 28 minutes. The season is a month old now. He's not in condition. This would not be a maneuver for the Rangers to get around the cap, because it's some zero on the cap. So again, I don't want to read too much into no comment, because that's all it was. It was no comment. And perhaps when and if Drury has that conversation with the agent, this will be the conversation. Yes, it's best for him. We understand what you're doing. The relationship is great.
It should be. The answer, though, is it should be. Anything else would be weird, I think. Right? Like, let's just say, again, hypothetically speaking, we do find out that there was a discussion about a conditioning assignment, and Vitali and his agent decline. The answer is why. Why? If that's not what's best for him. And also the other aspect to it is, what has he done to prove that he doesn't need to go to Hartford?
Right.
Because he hasn't, but he also hasn't had a chance.
Right. And let's be honest too, that if he did not require waivers, that's where he would be right now, because he needs to get up to speed.
Do you think so? Because I don't know, because I think that they, like you said, they need him to succeed. They need him to fit in. They need him to contribute. That would be so beneficial for them, given their cap situation, given their roster situation as well, and the depth that they have. It is in their best interest for him to, be playing well for them. But there's just so many different layers to it. And I think it's such a puzzling situation.
Right.
And
listen, you have to earn your minutes too.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you're in the National Hockey League.
Yeah.
You have to earn your minutes. At some point, you know, a spot is not bequeathed to you.
It's not.
It's competitive business, and you know, there are players who want that ice time. There are players in the room who want that ice time.
Yeah, Julian Gauthier. Julian Gauthier outplayed Vitali Kravtsov in training camp. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's just a fact.
Right. So again, I think everyone wants the same thing, but I guess we'll find out next week, and not to not to read too much into it, but there would be if the invitation were declined, it would not send a good signal.
I feel like it would be reverting back to what happened last season. It would be very similar, and that also just tells me that they have this narrow-minded tunnel vision idea that Vitali Kravtsov has to be an NHL player right now. But I feel like a lot of people don't really look at it like this, because I've seen Kravtsov take a lot of shit online, and I understand fans' frustrations. I really do. But you have to look at the big picture of it. Like, this kid, he's really trying to
he wants to please.
Yeah, he does. He absolutely does.
That's my impression of him. I obviously don't know, but I think he wants to be one of the boys, wants to be a good teammate.
100%.
I'm not sure that he knows how at this point. Again, we have very limited exposure to him. So we're not pretending that we know more about him. It's just observations, right? But he seems like he just wants to be another guy. He wants to be friendly. There's a language barrier. He seems very, very young. I know everyone to me seems very, very young. But he seems especially young.
Yeah, well, I mean,
and listen, part of it might be the language. He wants to talk to you in English. He wants to communicate in English.
He speaks pretty good English. He does.
And he does. So so it's kind of a mystery. He remains a mystery.
Yeah. And another observation from my end is I can tell how petrified he is of doing the wrong thing again, saying the wrong thing again. And given how everything unfolded last season, it is kind of the right attitude to have. He does want to, do all the right things by the Rangers, considering how everything went down last season. But I also think that might be impacting just his general ability to get acclimated to the NHL, get acclimated to the game. Like, it's almost in the back of his mind when he's on the ice too. Like, you can just see he's not, we all know him as this offensive gifted type, high skill, high talent kind of guy, and that just hasn't come through at all. It hasn't been able to. I think a lot of people need to take a step back and look at the big picture and cut the kid a break for a bit. I think this next step after he comes back from this injury will be very telling about him and his agent and their stance on him as an NHLer. So I think it'll be really telling, and maybe we should, hold some judgments until that comes out. So we'll see. But, you have to dedicate a lot of time to talk about this, because it has been a really big storyline.
It's also now been a multi-year saga.
Yeah, it really has been. You're right.
It's been a multi-year saga.
You're right.
They took him, he gets taken off the board, really an off the board pick at 9th overall. 9th. In a year where there are some pretty good players who were drafted after him. This is a player they locked into. Gordy Clark. I remember, the draft was in Dallas that year. Gordy Clark, talked about how he just locked into Kravtsov very, very early in the season and watched him play all year. And, was in his, Russian town, like all year watching him play. And and the interesting thing was he had a different agent when he was drafted.
Yes.
Paul Thomas was his agent.
Yeah.
Milstein is his agent now.
Yeah. Background on Milstein. Milstein reps all the major Russian players. Nikita
Well,
Kucherov.
Theophanis has Panarin.
He does too.
Yes,
but Milstein also,
and Tarasenko. So
right,
not
all, but Milstein has a good portion as well.
Many,
yeah, exactly. So so that's also, when you think about from Kravtsov point of view, he's going to probably hang on every word that his agent of advice and things like that, because he's got these big time guys on his, representation roster as well.
The other thing, I was going to say though about Theophanis is that night at the draft, the Rangers and Theophanis were talking about how he could. They perceived that he was really going to have a shot to make the team the next year, and he was going to have to. He had a contractual clause where there would either have to be notice or payment made. There was something that would have been an obstacle, but there's been such anticipation over Kravtsov. I remember even I think after his first year in the KHL, he remained over there for the first year. He wasn't ready, and the contract situation was in place. Mm-hmm. And then so the following year, Craig Button of TSN had him rated as the top affiliated NHL prospect.
I remember that.
So we're not talking about just some guy.
Yeah,
we're talking about a player who the Rangers invested a 9th overall pick in, whom the team has been anticipating,
highly touted.
The fans have been anticipating for years, and the only other player really who had that kind of a saga, it was Shesterkin, because he was drafted in 2014, and it was when is he going to come? When can they get him over? When can they get him over? So there was all this anticipation for Shesterkin, and there has been this kind of anticipation for Kravtsov, but whereas Shesterkin came over, was assigned to the American Hockey League. He played his,
it's true.
He played like 3 months in the American.
Yeah, he did. Right? That was always the plan, which I was told. That was always the plan.
But imagine if Shesterkin had been
said no.
So no, sorry, I'm going back. So again, the two distinct personalities, two different positions, two different players, two different agents. But again, the reason Kravtsov demands, I think, this much attention for a player who's played 28 minutes is because of the saga that has become Vitali Kravtsov. I mean, that's just what it has become. And again, you take a look at the Rangers, their cap situation. It's important for them that he become a player. It is, because they're going to have issues next year with we know all the reasons, but we're spending a lot of time on a player who's played 28 minutes, but there's a pretty good reason for it.
My question to you, Larry, what do you think? Let's say, hypothetically speaking, again, nothing changes in Vitali's game and his way to impact the game. He keeps getting hurt. When in the season do you, or if at all, do you think the Rangers decide to send him somewhere, to send him to the American Hockey League, or, I don't even know, or just decide that this is not, because again, getting back to the cap, they can't afford to be carrying a player who is consistently hurt or just not making any sort of impact at all.
Well, I would say that until we see how this unfolds in the next week or so, that's kind of premature.
Okay.
I think, because honestly, I think if he goes to Hartford, plays, comes up, then he becomes a player, and you try and fit him in, and you go from there.
Yeah.
I think if he were to decline, that presents an entire set of issues, because maybe maybe this is probably unfair, because we're this is so this is probably unfair. But if he were to say no, I would interpret that as I want out.
Yeah.
That's what I would interpret it as. But that might not be fair.
Yeah.
Because, again, you'd have to know the conversation between Drury you'd have to know Kravtsov's, real take on the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Kravtsov believes that he needs 2 weeks.
That's what I'm thinking.
Maybe
I'm
he'd go to
thinking,
them and say, "Look, I need to play. I
Yeah.
need to play." He understands. He talked about it in training camp. He understands that he was negatively impacted by not playing much last year. He talked about it. He gets that. So how does he improve by playing 8 minutes a game, 7 minutes a game, 9 minutes a game? He needs to get on the ice. He needs to play. He needs to be on the power play. He needs to be on the first. He needs that time. And so again, maybe he will say, "Listen, I need to go down and play. As soon as I'm ready, I want to go down and play." If it's if it's the opposite, then I'm not sure what we're dealing.
Then I just feel like it would be like history repeating itself at that point, and then I think, and then it's just not, the relationship is just not, it's not going to be able to come back from it a second time. I don't think.
Well, it's funny. They had a player, and he was a depth player, Dale Purinton, long time ago. They had a guy named Dale Purinton who was, a tough guy, real tough guy. I like Dale a lot as an individual. He was a pretty marginal player, but he was, he played a role. He was a tough guy. He was D. They moved him up to forward sometimes. And there was a year where he had been out, he had been injured. And they asked him after a couple of years, he had been in the league for a couple of years, and they asked him to go on a conditioning assignment, and he said no. And because he was afraid he was going to lose his spot, and Glenn Sather was the GM at the time. And, he said no, and it was, a fairly public thing. And I remember thinking and saying and writing, how could you keep him? Once a player says no to you on that request, you have to move him out of the organization. Well, they didn't, but Purinton went on and did what he did. But that's, my feeling is as a third party, and there, as a third party, you're never conversant with every detail. You're not as familiar with everything as when you're one of the two. But as a third party, my general rule would be, if you decline a rehab assignment, I'm going to move you. You're not doing what's best for the organization. That's your right. You have that right under the CBA to decline, but I also then have the right to move you. And that's kind of what I would take from a negative response would be, he just doesn't want to be in the organization. And, we shouldn't have him in the organization. But again, it's a lot easier for me to say and for me to write than, for Drury to do. And I get that. But again, we're spending a lot of time on something that hasn't happened.
I know, but you know what? You have to. I feel like this is what everybody's talking about. I knew I wanted to spend the entire time talking about Kravtsov with you.
That wraps up the Vitali Kravtsov show here on Up in the Blue Seats. If you want to hear more about Larry's thoughts on the Rangers, he had a good column that came out on nypost.com about 3 issues he's worried about, including heavy ice time for the top 6 forwards. Check that out. Larry Brooks, NYP_Brooksy on Twitter. Larry, we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys.